Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing great and are safe. I welcome you to Industry Inspired Talks, the podcast series. I'm Bhavna. I'm your host for the day. Through this podcast series, we bring inspiring industry leaders to share their experience and journey with us all. Today, we have an amazing person with us, Tim Esse. Tim is a seasoned recruiter with 20 plus years of experience in the field. He's recruited for various roles, domains, and across industries, including startups. He has won numerous awards right from the beginning of his career. And 15 out of that entire career that he's had was with Apple. At the moment, he's working for a company by name Growth by Design Talent, and he helps startups recruit for leadership roles as well. Tim is an amazing person with a lot of knowledge, which is ready to share with us. And he's considerate enough to provide us the time as well for that. The interview consists of two parts. Part one is all about Mr. Tim Esse's career journey, from where and how he started his journey to where he is now. We will also talk about the challenges that he had to face through his walk, through his path, and how he overcame them. Part two, we will talk more about his life now, his typical workday, and also the most sought after skills in 2021. We will also touch upon how recruiting has changed in the post-COVID era. To make the best use of his inspiring talk, I would urge you to watch both the episodes. Why wait? Let's jump into a conversation with him. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Industry Inspired Talks, and we have with us Tim Esse. Hi, Tim. We're thrilled to have you on Industry Inspired Talks.
Thanks.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's surprisingly warm in Minnesota for early March, so I'll take it.
That's great. Bright and sunny then.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm sure we're going to have a fantastic time today because there's a lot in recruiting that we can learn from you. And I'm sure our audience will also be thrilled to listen to you talk.
Cool. Good.
So let's begin then.
Sure.
Okay, Tim. The first thing that I have for you is, let's begin with the very beginning, basically. So let's begin with an overview of your entire journey, your amazing career with different companies, and your illustrious 15-year stint with Apple, and from where you started to where you are today.
Sure. I mean, if you go way back, I actually started just as an office admin working for Brooks Brothers, a clothing company that's been around forever, and then got restructured out of that and ended up going for a reseller that sold. I went to work there because they had stereo equipment, and I liked stereo equipment. Most young guys back in the day, stereo was kind of a deal, but they also had computers, and that was my first real exposure to them. It was, I sold an Apple IIe as my first computer, so I've got a few miles on me, and ended up at Microsoft for about a year and a half. I was there when they released Windows 3, and my job there was I sold to schools and colleges, and then resellers that sold to schools and colleges also. And then hopped around for a while, ended up at Best Buy on a recruiting contract for about 6 or 7 months, and they had a bunch of recruiters there, and they had a little bit of a downturn, and I'm going to say about 17 or 18 of us got let go at the same time. And I was really fortunate that, quite frankly, Apple found me. I didn't find Apple. I couldn't understand why they would be looking for a recruiter in Minnesota. I thought it was one of my coworkers playing a prank on me. So I ended up Googling the name of the hiring manager, and he was real, and it ended up working out. I mean, the hiring process went so smoothly that when I went for training, in Cupertino, I actually told my wife I was going for more interviews because I just couldn't believe that it was going that well. I mean, to get a job at Apple, and this was pre-iPhone, so I started a year before the iPhone was announced, and
Wow. Okay.
Apple was a different company then. A lot smaller, not as profitable by any stretch of the imagination. It was still doing well, but the iPhone changed it entirely. I mean, it was a whole game changer. And so I ended up working at Apple. I started, the first thing I worked on was the Fifth Avenue store in New York. And, I think that might still be the highest volume store. It is for sure in the US. There could be some in China that are bigger, but, before that, an average store would open maybe with 40 to 60 employees, and this one was opening with hundreds of employees. So it really changed how Apple did retail also. So then also recruited for, at the end I did store leadership recruiting and sourcing, and have done a bunch of different other stuff, mostly within the walls of retail at Apple. And now I'm working for a company that hires for startups. And so my job is helping hire recruiters to place into startups. So that's what I do now.
Okay. Oh, that's been quite a ride, I must say.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, if someone had said you're going to be here 15 years, I wouldn't have, at Apple, I would have doubted it, just because previous to that, my longest was 3 years anywhere. So, it was a good place to be, a lot of opportunities to learn, interesting work, and it's always fun to work for companies that are doing well. It's a challenge at working for a company that's barely getting by. They're always on the verge of being broke. They probably don't have good benefits. They can't invest in their employees. So, being with someone who's making money and can take care of their employees is great.
True, that's rightly said. And when you mentioned that, Apple found you, probably what I see on your profile, the right person for the right position at the right time, and the universe, it listens.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't know how much of a retail presence they had or were planning to have, and so it just really just seemed not. Then when you look at it that way, it kind of makes sense, because they were trying to have recruiters in certain areas to support that geography, and so then it made more sense. But at the time, it didn't seem to make so much sense that they'd want someone. And they already had a bunch of people in Minnesota. I never knew about that either. So.
And then it created a revolution of sorts. With the
it's just craziness. I mean, how they sold and how many people they need to sell, and before they did reservations for a new product in COVID, I mean, there'd be lines blocks long to get the latest iPhone, and there's just a total change in how things. I mean, I guess that still exists in like the sneaker market and collectibles and things like that that people line up for stuff. But
True. Yeah. So that was an amazing journey. And going to the second question that I have, what were your challenges when you started your career journey?
Yeah, if you look at recruiting, it's, since that's what I've been doing the longest, latest too, it wasn't my plan. I mean, you'll find there are some, but you don't find a lot of people that plan to go into recruiting. There's a lot of people that start in it because they were a manager somewhere and they had to hire someone for their division or group, and so they learn it somehow and they figure out how to hire somebody, and they go, "Oh, this is kind of interesting," and then they go into it. Or maybe they were in an HR field, which is different than recruiting, and they were asked to help out, and they decided that was interesting. Or like me, I started my first recruiting thing was actually as part of a direct sales company. So the old you hire two people and they hire two people and they hire two people and you're wealthy, kind of thing. And I enjoyed the recruiting side of it more, quite frankly, than I did the training side of it. And just kind of that led me to being a recruiter for a high volume wireless retailer. They were the largest independent wireless retailer in the US at the time, 400 plus stores. And it was super fast paced, and that got me a lot of experience. Well, that got me into Best Buy, as a contractor because I was going to recruit for some adjacent roles to that, and then eventually landed at Apple. So it's really an interesting field. You get to talk to a lot of different people. You get to learn a lot about the businesses that you're in because you're hiring for those businesses. So, but it wasn't a plan, and I honestly, I don't think most people plan to be in recruiting. Which is sort of too bad because it can be pretty lucrative and it's a fun job, interesting job. But again, I think most people end up there as part of just their journey or adventure from something else.
I'm sure that there are quite a few people, or probably now things are changing. You never know, and there could be a lot of people who wish to be in the HR and wish to be in the recruitment. And I know certain few people who wish to be in the campus recruitment field itself. And it's nice to know.
People plan to go into HR. I think that because there's like HR degrees and certifications, and whereas recruiting is, they don't have that. I mean, I've never seen a school where you can major in recruiting. You get a certificate later, but it's not like I can go to university and say I want to be a recruiter and they're going to have a path for me. Or HR, they've got all these rules and regulations you have to learn to follow and things like that. So I think that's a more common desired path than recruiting. You almost have to know someone that's done it to know that it's out there.
Right. I know, yes, rightly said. I mean, there's no person who's majored in recruiting as such or staffing.
Maybe somewhere, I don't know.
Or maybe somewhere down the line, maybe. So, then that brings us to our educational qualifications. And how did your education, take you to the place that you are today? How did that shape you? Because was it also related to?
I just I ended up with a standard business degree, business administration, which provides a foundation, but and hopefully colleges do it better, but I don't think so necessarily. They had a hard enough time teaching you how to find a job, let alone teaching you how to hire people. So it's or go and do that. So it's I would say the basics of knowing how businesses work and the different groups and what goes into certain jobs that you can learn in college could be applied to recruiting, but again, there's no recruiting major. There's, maybe internship would be the way I would do it. If I were to do it over again, I would, try to have gotten an internship in the talent field. You probably would be a coordinator or something like that, and just try it from there. But so if you look at who are recruiters, there's people that come from everywhere, more so than some other ones. And especially if you look at people that rise to recruiting through a job. So like say someone that was a retail manager that had to hire someone, a lot of retail managers that go really far in their careers maybe didn't, finish college because they're so busy working all the time. So
could be. Yes, that speaks a lot, because sometimes they grow higher up in ranks, and then they're in a way, either they like it or not, they're forced to recruit other people under them, and that's how they grow furthermore. Yeah, that happens. So could you tell us a little bit more about the full cycle recruitment phase? I mean, the entire thing?
I'd be happy to. It's, if you, like most things, that phrase would mean different things at different companies, but in general, it would mean that you are in charge of the entire hiring process. So you're finding the candidates, you're reaching out to them, you're interviewing them, you're placing them on a hiring manager schedule to be interviewed, and running that process. And then in some places, you're even the one that makes the actual final offer. That can vary more from company to company, where some companies, it's the hiring manager or the actual person who's going to be managing that new employee will do the actual offer. But a lot of times, because of the checkboxing things that are involved in, like background checks and work authorizations, things like that, that'll often be left to either the recruiting side or the HR side of the business. But some places will break it out to sourcing is one function, recruiting's another function, and then onboarding's another function, whereas the full cycle is the whole deal. So in most cases.
That's fantastic. That's great. I mean, from the time the position is open to the
maybe
job
you're
description. Sorry?
Yeah, you might be the one to post it even. You might be the one that's putting it out on the job boards or the internal site. So there were times where I was actually posting the position to the Apple job site, and then I would, wait for applicants to come in and apply, or I'd go and then proactively find them too. So.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. So in that case, I mean, job portals, of course, there are various job portals here. We have quite a few here, and I'm sure worldwide we have LinkedIn, and there are many other things probably in the US. I mean, you could probably specify that better. So how does that happen? I mean, are more people getting hired through LinkedIn these days, and few people from the job boards? Or how is it now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's always the thing that you're trying to find is that secret sauce to get the candidates.
Right.
There's some roles, usually I would say more entry level roles will be you're looking for the applicant, just because you're trying to hire, the holiday season. So if you look at like a Target or a UPS and some of the others, pre-COVID, they would, starting in late summer, they'd have open hiring events where you just show up, get in line, they interview you, and you're getting an offer the same day sometimes. Okay. And so those are, they'll put an ad in the paper, they'll buy some internet ads, they'll, do those kind of things to drive it. They do texting, all that kind of stuff, to drive people to just come in and apply. And I think as you move farther up the food chain and jobs, it's less that and more you going out to find it. So I just this week was talking with someone that I know from another company, and she hires people where there's like 10 of them in the world. Well, they're not applying for a job. I guess they do like patent searches or convention searches, speaking. They look for speakers. They look for people who are publishing papers. Those, they're really a detective trying to find these people, and then they woo them because, again, they're not looking for a job. I mean, so they know that they're one of 10 people in the world that can do it. So it's, what do you have to do to get them to even talk to you, let alone get them hired? So, but most, like a lot of the jobs that I've hired for, your LinkedIn is probably the biggest source of people. And it's interesting because there seems to be in a lot of organizations a bias against someone who's not working now and someone who applied. Well, they're looking, we don't want them. They can't be any good if they're looking, but if that same person isn't looking and they're on LinkedIn, they're a golden candidate. So not everywhere is like that, but there are some places like that. And then for searching for like hourly people, again, I think Indeed is probably the big job site right now that has the best traction. I mean, they found me on Monster. Apple found me on Monster, and I don't know if they're a player anymore. I could easily be wrong, but they're not what they once were. I'll say that. I hopefully don't get in trouble for it. No, I think Indeed is clearly the market leader in that space right now. So.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great news actually. And there are quite a few people who are now active post the COVID era, and we'll probably get back to get to those questions in a while. And there's one thing that really intrigues me most times. There are certain people who get into a particular career, maybe in the technical domain, and then they want to shift to a different domain, maybe get into sales or something of that sort. So the change of domain could happen based on the things that they have picked up along the way, or an interest that they have developed over a period of time. And what are your views on that, and how do industries view this? That plus certain people who go on a career break for varied reasons, and then they wish to rejoin mainstream work after a while. And what are your views on that? And how do companies and industries work based on this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if I were someone that was in some kind of an engineering role or a design role, and I wanted to move into sales, or someone was asking me, well, my recommendation would be that they do that within their own company first, because they're going to know your value as an employee. They're going to know that you're not quitting it because of something that happened. It's not a negative. Where it's more of a challenge to say, oh, I'm an engineer and I'm at 3M and I want to go, be an enterprise salesperson, or I want to sell Cheerios for General Mills. I mean, it's like, what's driving that change? So there's a whole nother layer of discussion that goes into that when you're looking for an external position than when you're trying to move internal. It still can be a challenge, but I think a lot of, specifically in sales, a lot of sales organizations would be excited to have someone that actually knows about the product technically to help sell it, excuse me. There might be some prejudice against the engineer as, well, they aren't salesy, because maybe they don't talk as much, or, which isn't really a good thing for sales necessarily, but it's perceived that way, or, they're an introvert or whatever it is. But again, if you're within your same org, it's a lot easier to make that change. And then maybe down the road you leave. If that's your goal, is to get somewhere else. I mean, it's always easier to move internal than it is external. As far as a career change with a break, it's really common right now. I mean, literally yesterday, I talked to 3 people that were coming out of sabbaticals, COVID, or other reasons. It was like, I just need time away. A couple of them had been in their career at the same company for a number of years. And it's just like, especially if you're coming from the startup world where it's very all-encompassing a lot of times. So you're just working a lot of hours. They expect it. It's a lot of your life, and hopefully it paid off, when they went public for you. But you could hit 2 or 3 of them that don't in a row before you hit them gold. So it's not unusual to need time off in between. So, and I think people are more accepting of that now. I mean, it's kind of like in the old days. If 3 years ago, if we were doing this video and my kid or my dog ran in, you'd go, oh man, that's the worst thing ever, how unprofessional. Now if you're on a video call and a dog or a kid doesn't come in, it's unusual. So
yes.
People are hopefully more willing to see those things as positive. Instead of just keeping working while you burn out and totally hate your job in the world, you take a break and then you come back energized and are ready to go. And I mean, that's what I saw in every one of the candidates I talked to yesterday. Even have a couple more today and tomorrow, same situation where, maternity leave, paternity leave, taking care of parents is a lot more common now, or at least a lot more talked about now than maybe 20 years ago. I mean, it just wasn't, you might have done it, it just wasn't really accepted to talk about it not too many years ago, where now it's really usual. Or, a spouse that's having medical issues. I mean, it's not, you start hitting that 40, 50 years old, your odds of that happening is a lot higher, so it's, so I mean, it's more common. I think people are more willing to talk about it now than they used to be. Just like, you see a lot more stuff around mental health in the workplace now than you did 10 years ago. I mean, hopefully it's not seen as a negative anymore. Whereas I think 10, 15, 20 years ago was not, you didn't bring it up, because you knew it wasn't a positive. Where now it's like, especially after this year, people really need to take care of themselves. And so there's a lot more going into that.
Absolutely. Tim, you stressed upon so many different points which are extremely valid in today's time. One being, people who are consciously making a decision to go on a break for various reasons. For some people, it could be traveling around the world to learn a lot of things, maybe picking up different, upskilling, lots of things. Taking care of ailing people at home, or for their own soul searching. I mean, there is probably some point in time where we question ourselves with the very basics, and you probably it just hits you at a point in time, and you need some break off from everything else. And these things, as you said, the last 10 years or so, probably, or even 5 years ago, I don't think mental awareness or self-awareness or meditation or anything of that sort was spoken in such detail or so often as we are today. And I see that as a progressive change, and I see that happening worldwide and not just in bits and pockets in the world. It's happening, and people are awakening to a lot of other things as well. And because of the kind of lifestyle that we all lead and the stress levels, I think it is also necessary for people to take a step back and reflect upon what is happening in their life. Beautifully, you've really summed it up extremely well, and I'm extremely happy. I'm sure that's going to be one of the biggest takeaways this entire talk that we've had. Oh wow, that's fantastic. And the other thing that you mentioned there was, there's an awareness also that's been created in the workplace. Like you said, people were maybe hesitant in talking about mental awareness earlier, and now they're open to talk about it or discuss with other people. I think that brings about a more humane side to all of us, especially after the COVID era. I think people and the workplaces are changing for the better.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've worked from home for 20 years, and I'm pretty comfortable with it. What I wasn't comfortable with or ready to do was have, my wife was wonderful, start working from home also. So all of a sudden we're under the same roof, both trying to work 24/7. It was an adjustment. And I was talking to a coworker about it, and I said, yeah, I don't know how you do it. She has 2 kids. Her husband is at home also. And she goes, yeah, just the other day, I'm like, why is your hair so loud? To her husband, just like one step too far. And a lot of this, I think, COVID has brought to the forefront, because it's brought, a lot of challenges for people. And it's like, I think people are more willing to talk about it now because of it than before. Because I had been during Minnesota, I was in the fall, I have activities, in the summer I have activities. So I was out of the house a lot, but boy, come January, and when we were 20 below for a few days, it's like, I had to get out of the house, and it was an issue, I just could not be in anymore. So it was, and that's not a huge deal compared to what a lot of people are going through, where, they have people that are actually sick, they're undergoing COVID, they're sick from the virus, they, or, people have brought their families in-house because they didn't want them in a nursing home, those kind of things, or their family wasn't around and they were worried about them. So, I mean, I think it's certainly, and I think the places that people want to go work at, there's jobs you have to take because you have to pay bills and whatnot. And most of us have to have a job. And then there's jobs that you want to go to because they encourage you to be yourself. They let you bring, that phrase I think they use at Apple was, I can be my authentic self at work. So you don't have to pretend that you're somebody else. Or they, let you have your hobbies that are different and they don't judge you on it, or, and they help you do things to keep you physically and mentally healthy, and those are the places that people want to go work. So as you get past certain points in your career, or if you're a company that wants to hire the best people have choices. It's not like in the old days where we all lived, in villages, and, I was a cobbler because my father was a cobbler and his father was a cobbler. People have choices now, and it's like, why should I go work for you? What are you going to do for me besides money? I can get money a lot of places, especially once you have some experience, you have some choices. So it's like, what? It's like the new place I'm working, they said, yeah, you can still work from home. You can work whenever you want. Let us know how much you want to work. They made it really easy to say yes. I mean, I was quite frankly retired before this. I had just decided to retire. I was in a position where I could do that. And an old manager reached out and he said, hey, I've got this opportunity. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be selling, dish soap door to door or something like that. But No, it's helping startups recruit recruiters. Well, that's interesting. I like the startup idea, and recruiters, they're fun to talk to, and you can work kind of whatever you want. And they have some rules, how much or how little, and all that kind of stuff that just to make it work out for everybody. But those are the places that people want to end up. They if you got a boss who's not enjoyable to work for, and it's not because of your performance, it's you're doing your job well, and you stress out Sunday nights that Monday morning's right around the corner. Maybe you start looking, and the companies that take care of your mental health and have matching in their retirement plans and do things that make you want to go to work and help them succeed. I think they're the ones that in the long run are going to do well. Now, they have to make money to be able to do those things. So sometimes you see places that have companies that have all these great benefits and this and that and the other thing, and a year later they're out of business because they didn't make any money. So, there has to be some realism in what's going on, but yeah.
Wow. People have choices. I mean, that really...
Most of the time, not always. Yeah, if you're a coal miner in Appalachia, maybe not so much choice, but you can move. I think that's a challenge. Some people don't want to move, and so their job just doesn't exist anymore. But
that's really true. Yeah. So you've been recruiting for various roles, and of late, and you've also been recruiting for leadership roles, if I'm not wrong. So what are the most essential skills required for being a successful leader in today's era, from your point of view?
Yeah, if you look at just a couple, and again, COVID changed a lot of things in a lot of ways, obviously. And if you look at a few years ago, it was all about, your metrics and your KPIs and knowing the business, your inventory turn, and all those things. And those things are all still super important. Because without those, again, you're not going to be in business for very long. But that personal connection, the empathy for your employees in this past year was super huge, because you had to work with people whose families were going through a lot of things, and it wasn't just like one person was going through it. In some orgs, it's like a lot of people. So, being able to work with your employees on how do they take care of their parents that are maybe home now? How do you, their kids are at home schooled, being flexible, a lot of people are not going to want to go back to an office, and it has nothing to do with COVID. I enjoyed it. The flip side, there's a lot of people like, man, I got to get back to an office. I miss people. So, it depends upon the personality, but, it's really that personal connection piece now, even ever more so than ever, that, is the biggest thing. And I know that, I'll refer to Apple a lot because that's where I just was, but, I don't think they laid off anyone in retail specifically because of COVID. They found other things for them to do. And they did a lot of training, but they're touching base with their store people. The stores are reaching out to their employees all the time, and if someone had COVID, it's especially with younger employee base generally, it's like a bunch of them probably live together or they're, in relationships. And so one of them gets sick, all of a sudden that's maybe up to 5 of your employees that are in contact with them. How do you make sure that they're not coming in? Because you have to take care of the healthy people that aren't exposed. And, so there's a lot of, people worried about their jobs. Am I going to have, I feel super bad for all the people who lost jobs during this, because it's not anything they did. We haven't been through this kind of thing in a long time. I think back to like my grandparents. It seems like, you're reading the history books, there's always some kind of fever or TB or mumps, measles, whatever it was going, or polio. We haven't seen stuff like this, at least in the US, for generations, quite frankly. So it's, how do you do these things? How do you take care of people? And that's, again, to me, that's the biggest thing in a leader right now. Again, you have to have, I think the phrase is, it's the price of admission, knowing your KPIs, knowing your inventory turns, with your sales, all the business side of it. You have to have that just to get in the door. But to be successful right now, especially, and wishful thinking, it had always been true that I've been lucky over the years to have really great managers that, would take care of their people, but that's not the case. It has not been the case in a lot of places in the past. And I think, again, those places that have done that well are going to be the ones that rise up out of this in a better position, maybe.
Wow. Yes, true that. And I see the change world over almost exponentially these days. And people are reaching out to other people they know, people they don't know, and everybody is willing to help. I mean, it's a heartening thing to see. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I mean, it's you see more people that, oh, hey, there's extra vaccine at this place, and so they'll post on Facebook, or have you tried this organization? They help you take care of sick family members, or have you tried this thing? And I think a lot more people are willing to help now, because I think a lot more people are, exposed to it in their own world maybe than they were before.
Yes.
A lot of us have, led pretty decent lives, as far as a lot of things, and now everyone, I think, knows someone who knows, that, has been sick or has family members who've been impacted. So I think you're right that a lot more people care, are willing to help out, or, lend expertise or whatever it is to other people than before. And it's easier to do now too, in some ways.
Yes. And people are becoming more, as I mentioned earlier, more humane. I see that happening, and they're more open to talk about a lot of things. And there's help. People are ready to ask for help as well, and that was almost a taboo earlier. Asking for help was seen as a weakness. Now it's gaining more momentum. People are seeing that as a strength. Now this brings us to the end of part 1. If you felt inspired and gained more knowledge, please hit the like button. And also subscribe to our channel to gain an access to more such inspiring videos and interviews by industry leaders. Now here's an update about part 2. Part 2 will be available for your access this Friday. Until then, keep inspiring and get inspired.